video goes out to all the people modding their weapons wrong within Escape from Tarkov. Tons of people, even the ones that I know, choose to only focus on reducing their recoil stats and letting the rest of their stats on the weapon suffer. And in reality, if you choose to inspect a weapon that you're modding, there are tons of other stats that you should pay attention to. So in this video, I'm going to go over and explain every single one of those stats that you will see on the inspect screen, and then after that I'll explain what you should be doing to get the most out of your weapon, in hopes to give you a better understanding on what means what in this sometimes very confusing weapon inspect screen. Throughout this video you'll be seeing this image pop up quite a bit. This is the weapon inspect screen itself. Side by side are two different M4 builds to show you how the stats can vary. So just bear in mind that I'll be using this image quite a bit as reference, as well as the M4s themselves for some testing later on. Starting from the top of the weapon inspect screen with our first statistic, and that is weapon durability. This by default, as soon as you buy a weapon, should be at 100 out of 100. The only reason this could be any different is if you have purchased a weapon from Fence or the flea market, in which case the weapon could be secondhand and used. The more you use that specific weapon, the lower it will get. As you can see, I have an M4 on the left that I have used in one raid, and the stat for this is 99.4 out of 100 rather than 100 out of 100. Don't worry too much about this stat until you get about under 70, as this is when you'll start to see your weapon jamming and degrading more rapidly. The lower that you let this weapon durability get, the more it will degrade and the more frequently your weapon will jam. Right clicking on a used weapon will give you the option to repair it, but honestly, if you've lived that long with that specific weapon and it is in desperate need of repair, then you're quite clearly a god and you should easily be able to purchase a brand new one from the blood money of your enemies. The more that you cycle rounds through your weapon of choice, the quicker that you'll see this stat decrease, so bear that in mind. Some weapons, the faster they fire, will degrade quicker, but other than that, this shouldn't be a stat to worry about too much. Moving down one, you will see weapon mastering. Now this doesn't really improve how a weapon performs until you max it out, but this is basically a skill which levels the more you use a specific weapon. Next to the text, weapon mastery, you'll see a number, and this number will either be 1, 2 or 3, 1 being the lowest level and 3 being the highest and maxed out level for mastering. To level this skill you simply need to use the weapon quite a bit. As you can see, I use the M4 quite a bit, and yet my weapon mastering is still on level 1 out of 3, and I am 750 out of 1000 points away from level 2. Each level you gain will unlock you slightly quicker and cooler looking reload animations, and when you reach the master rank with that weapon, you'll unlock the ability to reload whilst aiming down sights for that weapon. This mastery is set for that weapon specifically, so say you've mastered the M1A, you wouldn't have mastered the SVD for example. However, the M4, ADAR, TX15 and HK416 all have the same mastery, so that will be the same for a few other weapons as well, like the AK-74 and AK-100 series of weapons. Now we can move down to one of the most important and better known stats within the game, and this is Ergonomics. Ergonomics is a stat that is affected by many attachments of a weapon, so how you mod a weapon is very specific on how much ergonomics you'll get out of it. Each weapon has its own standardized ergo stat, which is indicated by the grey bar on the ergonomics section. This grey bar will either be paired with an additional solid blue bar or a striped red bar. The solid blue bar will show you how your modifications have positively affected the ergonomics of the weapon that you're modding, and the striped red lines will show you how you've negatively affected ergonomics. As you can see in my reference images, both of the M4s have positive effects over the base ergonomics. However, my one to the left has a much better improvement of 75 ergonomics rather than 54. This is because it's built with really good ergonomic parts like the Graless pistol grip and the Shift 4 grip. The ergonomic stats are rated out of 100, so the closer you get to 100, the better the ergonomics are going to be, and ergonomics do quite a good few things inside of Raid in terms of how the weapon performs. Firstly, and more commonly, it will change how quickly that the weapon aims down sights. Take a look for yourself as we compare our two different M4s. On the left side of the screen you can see our 75 ergo M4, and on the right side of the screen we have an M4 with 54 ergo. As you can see, there is a difference with how quick the weapon aims down sight. Not a massive amount of difference, but you can definitely see a difference, and this will save your life in a pinch if it comes down to it, I can promise you that. Ergonomics also changes how loud your weapon is when you aim down sights, which bear in mind other players can hear too, so the quieter the better. Once again, I'll show you this with our two reference M4s. I'll aim down sights with a higher ergo M4, and then straight after I'll use the lower ergo M4. Listen out for a difference. It's not the easiest to hear, but there definitely is a difference there, and trust me when I say that enemies can hear your weapons like anything, so be careful of that. If you have a weapon with low ergonomics, it's going to be clanking around all over the shop, and people know when you're aiming down sights or holding a corner, and they'll try and flank you rather than coming around and being completely blinded. Lastly, ergo will also change the speed of which your stamina will drain when you're aiming down sights. So for this example, I'll put both weapons side by side once again, aim down sights with a timer, and then we can see how quick the stamina drains, and you will see the difference there. As you can see, both weapons lasted quite a long time, but the M4 with 75 ergo definitely lasted longer. It drained our arm stamina, and then they both drained our leg stamina once our arm stamina was out, but we did last a lot longer with our higher ergo M4. So those tests are just from weapons that have 21 ergos difference between them. Imagine how varied this can be with weapons that have like an 80 ergo difference. So overall, make sure you have the highest ergo possible when you're building your weapons, because this stat is extremely important. And also bear in mind, if you're looking to improve your weapon's aim down sight speed and reduce the stamina drain, then weapon weight at the top right of the inspect menu also has an effect on this stat, but it's definitely not as much as ergonomics, so this is definitely an important one to look at. The next one is a really important one also, but it's one that some people overlook. That one's accuracy. Now this is more important if you're looking at a weapon for long range combat, because accuracy is all about how your weapon performs over longer distances. Now accuracy in shooty gun terms is determined by MOA, which stands for minute of angle, which in less mathematical terms is basically a way of saying 1/60th of 1 degree. Explaining MOA can sometimes be quite tricky, so I tried my hardest at recording a quick segment explaining exactly how this works on MS Paint, so enjoy my very layman's terms of explaining MOA. Minute of angle can be quite complicated, but it can be described pretty much in layman's terms, and that's what I'm going to be doing for you so you can understand what happens, especially in real life shooting and Tarkov. So here we are in Paint, the most amazing tool for visualization on the computer, and we have a weapon shooting at a range of up to 500 yards. Now it's a common fact that a weapon when firing a bullet is not just going to go in a straight line all the way across. There's going to be bullet drop, wind is going to affect it, your bullet is constantly losing velocity, and different calibers and different weapons have different ways of getting that bullet through the air. Some do better, some do worse, hence the reason you ain't going to be sniping with a pistol. You'll choose a weapon with a longer barrel and a bigger caliber. So if this weapon is firing, a more realistic look at it would be a cone, because the bullet can travel in any direction based on wind and bullet drop, etc. And that cone is all dependent on your MOA. If your MOA is lower and that weapon is firing a bullet and the bullet is going straighter, then your MOA is going to be lower and therefore impacting a tighter impact circle. For example, if your weapon has 1 MOA, then at 100 yards, this in between these two red lines is going to equate to a 1 inch of impact. At 200 yards, it'll be 2 inches of impact, and it's relative upwards. But obviously, not all weapons have just one MOA. For example, my reference M4 has a 2 point something MOA, but again, this is very simple maths, because rather than a 1 inch impact at 100 yards, it'd be a 2.5 inch impact at 100 yards, and then a 5 inch impact at 200 yards. And that means that your bullet can sway in any direction within a 5 inch radius at those distances. So when you're ranging your weapon in Tarkov and you see that your bullet's going slightly left even though you feel like you're ranged correctly, this is down to your MOA. If your bullets are going left, your bullets are going right, your MOA is too high. If you can get your MOA lower, and you'll find that a lot of weapons in Tarkov, especially sniper rifles, have a very low MOA anyway, you'll be hitting shots more accurately. Now in theory, 1 MOA isn't exactly 1 inch, it's 1.047 to be precise, but we don't need to worry about that. As simple as we can put it, it is 1-to-1 ratio. So 1 MOA is 1 inch, 2 MOA, 2 inches at 100 yards. And then you just use quick maths to equate it up for how long you're shooting, how long the distance is, and you can go from there. That's the simplest way I can explain MOA. It's a bit of a nightmare, but to be fair, once you get it down and you've got that rough knowledge in your head, it's really easy to pick a weapon with the right MOA for the right distance, and then you can go from there. Cheers for that paint, Sam, really appreciate it. So with a high MOA stat, it's not ideal. Obviously you want to reduce this as much as possible, and you can do this in a couple of ways, and that's by swapping out a few attachments, adding longer barrels and stuff like that, and also using weapons with naturally higher calibers. This will keep your MOA as low as possible, giving you better results when firing a weapon at range. Next, going down on our list is sighting range. Now this is a very simple stat and is purely depending on which sight you're using and which sight the weapon has on it. This is the maximum effective range that you have, and therefore the maximum range that you can get on your scope, accounting in the mil dots and ranging using page up and page down. This is a very simple one, and honestly not one that you need to focus on at all. Another very important statistic comes next, and this is recoil, separated into 2 different sections, vertical and horizontal. This can be altered by the attachments that you use on your weapon, and also by leveling the skill recoil control. Each weapon has its own standardized recoil stats, which is indicated once again by a grey bar. This grey bar will either be paired with an additional blue striped bar or a solid red bar. The striped blue bar will show you how your modifications have positively affected the recoil of the weapon, and the solid red line will show you how it has negatively affected recoil. Reducing the vertical recoil will reduce how high your weapon moves upwards when shooting either a burst or full auto spray. Reducing the horizontal recoil will reduce how much the weapon bounces side to side when firing. It's pretty self-explanatory while having lower recoil is going to help, but this is simply because it will make it easier to land shots on target, and getting more shots on target quicker is obviously going to bring down an enemy quicker, and then as long as you're using the right ammo and aiming center mass or head, your fights are going to be a lot easier overall. I'll test this with our 2 reference M4s firing a 30 round mag side by side against a wall, and then going for a closer up look and a better look at their bullet groupings. The M4 on the left has 13 less vertical recoil and 36 less horizontal recoil than the M4 on the right, so let's see how they compare and how much a small recoil change can affect things. As you can see, we did not use the mouse to control either spray, and you can clearly see a tighter grouping on the M4 with less recoil. So therefore spending a little bit extra money and getting parts that lower your recoil will work wonders, especially if you kit that out with a weapon with high ergonomics. Next up is our final main statistic, and that is muzzle velocity. This is the stat which decreases the drop rate of your bullet and increases the speed at which your bullet travels. This is measured by meters per second and works best at longer range engagements. You ideally want your muzzle velocity to be as high as possible, which comes into its own at larger ranges, and you don't need to range your weapon so much either, or lead your shot so much if you're taking on a moving target. Longer barrels on your weapons and faster armor penetrating bullets will increase your weapon's muzzle velocity. Getting the stat as high as possible joint with a very low MOA will give you the most accurate long range weapon possible, and that is ideal if you are going up against targets at longer distances. Now we've gone through the main stats on these weapon inspect screens, there are a few simpler stats on the inspect screens as well that you really don't need to go into much detail about. You have the type of fire, which shows you whether your weapon is semi-auto only, or full auto and burst, or all of them put together. You can also get told the weapon's caliber, so you don't try to chamber the wrong ammunition type. You can also see the fire rate, which is actually really good to know. Now this is purely dependent on the weapon and will not change depending on attachments, but this will give you an idea on how many rounds per minute or RPM you will get down range. Like I said earlier, the quicker you can get accurate fire back to an enemy, the better you'll either suppress them or the quicker you'll kill them, providing you're using the right ammo type. And then finally you get the effective distance. This is basically a standardized estimate on the maximum distance you should be using this weapon, based on its base stats without any extra modifications or changes. But with the size of maps at the moment, most weapons will be used as snipers to some degree, and that isn't a problem at all. Anyway guys, this is every stat. So what stats do you need to look out for when creating a meta weapon? Well honestly, it depends on what you're going to be using the weapon for. If you're looking for a really good long range semi-auto sniper, then you're going to want to purely focus on getting high ergo with a low MOA and a high muzzle velocity. If you're going for a full auto close quarters monster and you don't need to aim down sights as much, then you're going to want to mix it up with a really low recoil build with a decently high ergonomics. And if you can get yourself a weapon with a really high fire rate, then this is going to be ideal for a close quarters weapon. Anyway guys, let me know what you think down below and let me know if you've learned anything, but other than that, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again soon. Really do appreciate your support on these videos, so if you didn't like it, a like's always appreciated, subscribe for future content and all that jazz. I'll see you soon. Anyway guys, I thank you all for watching all the way to the end of this video. Your support really does mean a lot to me. It allows me to keep doing what I love to do and get new content out for all of you lot. If you like the video that I just put out, then a like is always appreciated, and if you want to stick around and get updated when I upload, then consider hitting that subscribe button and the bell notification icon. According to YouTube's analytics, then the majority of people that watch my videos are not subscribed, so if you're someone like that, then why not hit that little button below? It's free and it helps my channel out, so what do you really have to lose, right? And if any of you guys are interested in playing demanding games like Tarkov but are struggling with the performance, why not check out Shadow? Shadow's a cloud gaming subscription service that allows you to access a Windows desktop client with the top of the range hardware located at your nearest data center. Shadow is a service that I still use all the time. Anytime I'm out of the office and need to edit a video or record some footage, Shadow is perfect. They're a company that I really enjoy working with, and they're ideal for anyone who travels a lot or just someone that can't afford a super high powered PC. Shadow's got many people covered as long as you've got a relatively decent internet connection. If you wanted to check Shadow out, then there's a link below that you can go and do your research and find out more about their services. And if you do decide to subscribe to Shadow, then you can use my code Samosh and you'll save yourself some money, which is always worthwhile. I'd like to thank you once again for making it to this point in this video. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.